What up, sis? This is a great question. I'm actually glad you brought this up. Let's talk about it. So first, the Sabbath or Shabbat simply refers to rest. The origins of it, God created the earth in 6 days, or the world in 6 days, and rested on the seventh. So He made that a principle and something for His people to observe once giving His law. And when I say His people, I'm talking about the Israelites. But we should know this already, right? Exodus 20, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days you shall do no labor and do all your work. The seventh day is a Shabbat of Yahweh, your God. So, we see this being given to the Israelites coming out of Egypt. Then we see in Deuteronomy that it is established as actual law. The thing about it is, what Christians need to remember is that you're reading something that was given to the Hebrews. This was not meant to be continued today. This is the old covenant that was given to them while they were in the land, and it was only up until the coming of the Messiah. Here, I think this is what the problem is. When people become Christian, particularly in the West, you feel me? They want to read the entire Bible. So what do? They start with Genesis, then they go to Exodus, then they go to Numbers, then or Leviticus, then Numbers, then Deuteronomy, then realize, God dang, I don't think I'm gonna keep reading the Bible consistently. It's so long and boring. And they fall into this trap of reading these things written in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and think, oh, am I sinning by not continuing to do what God told the Israelis, the Hebrews, not to do? That's why people bring up tattoos. That's why people want to bring up, you feel me, not eating certain foods, you feel me, all this type of irrelevant stuff, really. And the Sabbath. The Sabbath is brought up because, I mean, look, it says it clear as day right there, right? God says to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. That's supposed to be done throughout all generations, right? Wrong. No, it's not. Why? Because the Sabbath was a shadow of Christ to come. Now, Christ, under the new covenant, is our rest. Everything that was done in the Old Testament was meant to point to the coming of the Messiah and what the Messiah would be to the people. Hebrews chapter 4 talks about believers entering into a Sabbath rest, which is in Jesus. He goes on to describe how Jesus is our great high priest and how we should be diligent unless or else we'll fall into the same temptation or the same disobedience, I should say, as the children of Israel who were not allowed to go into the land. You know what I'm saying? Who did not enter into rest. And just for context, the book of Hebrews or the letter to the Hebrews was written to Jewish people, Jewish believers who were being pressured by non believing Jews to continue temple sacrifice, to continue being under the law. To which the writer of the Hebrew letters said that if you do that, you are making the sacrifice of Christ null and void. That's why he was saying there will be no sacrifice. You can't you once you start doing that, you cannot go back. You know what I'm saying? You cannot go under the law and have faith in Jesus Christ. And this is how this is applicable to us today. To the Christians telling you that you need to observe the Sabbath, and they think that they are justified, their faith is justified by them keeping the Sabbath. They are violating Paul's words in Galatians. They're violating the writer of Hebrews' words. Uh, they're trying to keep you under the law, and that is wicked. That is not righteous at all. Because what they're saying is, I'm justified by my law keeping instead of faith. Don't let people pressure you to keep the law, keep the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? We're under the new covenant. The law has been written on our hearts. That makes it a much more personal and intimate thing rather than just following the letter of the law. And look, for those of y'all who say, look, Cam is trying to tell y'all to not obey, to be disobedient. You guys are the ones being disobedient because you are the ones thinking that you're justified by your works instead of faith. You're the one keeping the yoke of the law on the necks of the people, just like the Pharisees did, trying to tell them they must do this or they will not see eternal life. They will not go to heaven. They are not saved unless they do it just like you and keep the Sabbath. That's evil. So look right here, Matthew 12:8 says, Jesus said, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Y'all know what that means? Jesus is saying he's the ruler over the Sabbath. Look to him. Focus on him, not the Sabbath. Jesus is the Lord even over the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not as important as the Lord himself. You know, right after this, Jesus was then criticized for doing a great work on the Sabbath. Think about that. The people, the Christians that try to make you feel a certain type of way for not keeping the Sabbath like they keep it, this is the spirit that they're of. They are of this Pharisaical spirit. You know what I'm saying? Look at what else Jesus said. Mark chapter 2, verse 27. And Jesus was saying to them that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. I mean, let's think about this. What does that mean? What do y'all suppose Jesus means when he says this? The focus should not be on the Sabbath. It should not be on the day. The focus should be on him, the Son of Man. Here's a question you guys should ask these people that may pop up in a comment section talking about, nah, you need to keep the Sabbath. What do you think you gain by keeping the Sabbath under the new covenant? What is it you think you gain? Do you think you gain heaven? Do you think your eternity is secure because you're keeping the Sabbath? If you can't answer that question, then you need to stop telling people that they need to keep the Sabbath. That's what you need to do. Do you think it makes you more righteous to tell people that you keep the Sabbath still because the children of Israel kept the Sabbath? Do you think that makes you more righteous? Because the children of Israel, the Jews, thought that they were more righteous for simply being the Jews, for being sons of Abraham. But what did Jesus say? No, that doesn't matter, little buddies. That doesn't matter because his children are children of faith, little buddy, not of the flesh, little buddies. You know, it's funny because John the Baptist was like, oh, yeah, so you guys feel like you guys say you're sons of Abraham, right? But God can take one of these rocks and turn it into a son of Abraham. So it really doesn't matter. So my bad, this ran kind of long, sis. Most of this wasn't even directed towards you. You were simply asking a question, and I was mainly speaking to the ones who like to put the yoke on people's neck and try to be like, you need to keep the Sabbath, when you're right. It is not necessary. It is totally not necessary. You know, what we see the early Christians doing was being in the synagogues on Shabbat, like they were supposed to, because they were Jews, right? And they were teaching from the scriptures, the Old Testament scriptures, how Jesus fulfilled those prophecies until they got kicked out of the synagogues. You know what I'm saying? And then they would gather together on Sunday, which is the Lord's Day, in memorial to Jesus resurrecting, being resurrected on the third day. So that's what we see in the New Testament. I mean, how many of these supposed Christians are like going to, a Jewish temple or a synagogue on a Saturday, you feel me, a Friday night, and then like on Sunday, you know what I'm saying, they're worshiping, they're in church. What exactly do they even do on Shabbat that they think that they're keeping it, you know what I'm saying, quote unquote? So anyways, I hope this helps. Deuces, y'all.